Welcome to Whisper Secrets, where the most intimate mysteries come to life. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the bell so you never miss a secret. Now, let's pull back the veil. I don't know what I expected when she walked through that door. After everything, after months of silence and broken trust, I thought maybe I'd be ready for it. Maybe I'd be prepared for the way her face would look, filled with apologies, filled with regret, but I wasn't. There is no way to prepare yourself for seeing the woman you loved, the woman you thought would always stand by you, walk back into your life after she's shattered everything. It was 9:47 p.m. when she returned. I had just finished eating dinner alone, sitting at the table where we used to sit together every night. The apartment felt emptier than it had in weeks, months even. The silence between the two of us after she had left was deafening. The weight of her absence was harder to bear than the betrayal itself. She stood in the doorway for a moment, her hand still on the doorknob, as if she were hesitating. Her blonde hair, which used to cascade around her shoulders in soft waves, was now tangled and limp. She looked tired, too tired. Like she hadn't slept in weeks. And the emptiness in her eyes, it was almost like I didn't know her anymore. She wasn't the woman I had married. She was a stranger. I stayed seated, my hands gripping the edge of the table, my knuckles white. I didn't stand up. I didn't need to. I wasn't sure I could stand. "Callum," she said, her voice fragile. She took a step forward, but I didn't move. I just kept staring at her, waiting for the words that were supposed to come, the ones I wasn't sure I even wanted to hear. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice flat, almost distant. She stopped, her breath catching. "I made a mistake. A huge mistake." I let the words hang in the air for a moment, unsure of how to react. The anger I felt towards her was still simmering inside me, but it wasn't what I expected. It wasn't the fury I had imagined. It wasn't that sharp, gut-wrenching feeling of betrayal that came when I first learned what she had done. Now, it was just exhaustion. It was the kind of exhaustion you feel when you've been fighting for too long and have nothing left to give. "You think this is just a mistake?" I said, my voice low. "You think that's what it is?" She flinched, and I could see the tears welling up in her eyes. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how to make it right." "Don't even try," I said, my voice hardening. "Don't try to make excuses. You left. You left, Sarah. You left for him. And now what? Now you think you can come back? Now you think you can just waltz back in and ask for forgiveness?" She didn't answer. She took another step forward, her eyes pleading with me. "Callum, I'm sorry. I can't undo what I've done. I can't take it back. But I'm here. I want to make things right. Please." I stood up then. I couldn't sit any longer. I had to move, had to do something. But when I stood, I felt the weight of everything hit me all at once. The betrayal. The lies. The days spent wondering where she was, who she was with, what she was doing while I was here, waiting for her to come home. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just stared at her, trying to make sense of it all. "Make things right?" I repeated. "How do you make something like this right? How do you fix what's been broken? How do you fix trust that's been shattered? How do you fix me?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. She just stood there, her body trembling slightly. "I didn't mean for it to happen, Callum. It was him. I felt like I wasn't being seen by you anymore. I thought maybe it was me, that I wasn't enough. And he gave me attention. He made me feel wanted." I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to hold it together. I could feel the tears pressing against my eyelids, but I refused to let them fall. "You slept with him," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You went to him for comfort. And now you want to come back like nothing happened." "I'm sorry," she said again, her voice breaking. "I never meant to hurt you." "You already did," I whispered, my heart sinking. "And I don't know if I can ever forgive you." The silence that followed was suffocating. I couldn't look at her anymore. I couldn't hear her apologies anymore. What was the point? What could she say that would undo what had been done? She stood there for what felt like an eternity, her hands clenched tightly at her sides, waiting for me to say something. Anything. But I couldn't. I had nothing left to give. I need you to leave, I said, my voice steady now, almost cold. I need space. I need to think. I can't do this anymore. She didn't fight me. She didn't beg. She just nodded, tears silently falling down her face as she turned and walked out the door. And as she left, I felt the finality of it. It was over. There was no going back. There was no way to fix it. There was no way to undo the damage. The next few days were a blur of numbness. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I just felt nothing. There was nothing left to feel. I had no idea what to do with myself. I went to work, came home, stared at the walls, and went to bed. I stopped talking to friends. I stopped answering calls. I just needed space. Space from everything. It wasn't until a week later that I realized something. I was still alive. I had been living in this prison of self-pity, thinking that everything was lost. But I hadn't lost myself. Not yet. And if I was going to get through this, I needed to let go. Sarah's absence was still heavy. I still wondered if she was thinking of me, if she felt guilty. But then, a strange thought crossed my mind. Why should I care? Why should I care if she regretted it? Why should I care if she was hurting? She had made her choices, and now it was my turn to make mine. I wasn't going to sit here and wallow in my own misery. I wasn't going to keep holding on to something that wasn't mine anymore. I had to move forward. I saw her one last time, a few weeks later. She showed up at my apartment, her eyes still filled with regret, but there was something different now, something I couldn't place. "I'm sorry, Callum," she said again, her voice pleading. Please, just tell me what I can do to fix this." I looked at her for a long moment, the anger I had felt before now replaced with something else, something calmer, something more final. "You can't fix this," I said, my voice quiet. "It's broken. And I don't know if it's worth fixing. I can't keep holding on to something that isn't there anymore." She started to cry again, her shoulders shaking as she fought to find the words. But I didn't wait. I turned around, walked to the door, and opened it. "Goodbye, Sarah," I said softly. "I hope you find what you're looking for." And with that, I closed the door. The days after Sarah's departure felt like a slow march through time, each moment stretching out longer than the last. I kept telling myself that I was doing the right thing, that I was moving forward, but it didn't feel that way. I couldn't escape the empty space she had left behind. It wasn't just the physical absence, though, of course, that was heavy. It was the emotional void, the silence where once there had been shared laughter, shared memories, and a shared life. I spent the first few weeks trying to convince myself that I was fine. That I was okay. But I wasn't. I was far from it. I thought the worst part would be the confrontation, the anger, the hurt. But the worst part came after. When it all settled into a painful silence. The realization that everything I had built with Sarah was a lie. That our love, our promises, had been built on something fragile. I stopped answering texts from mutual friends. I didn't want to hear their sympathy, their attempts to make me feel better. I didn't want their pity. I didn't want their advice. All I wanted was to be left alone. It was in this isolation that I began to truly understand the damage done. Not just by Sarah, but by myself. I had ignored my own needs for too long. I had convinced myself that what we had was enough, that love alone could keep us together. But love, I had learned, wasn't always enough. There was something deeper, trust, respect, shared goals, that had been eroded over time. And I hadn't seen it. I hadn't wanted to see it. The phone rang one afternoon, breaking my solitude. For a moment, I hesitated, looking at the screen. It was Sarah. My first instinct was to ignore it. To let it go to voicemail. But then, for some reason, I answered. "Ethan," she said, her voice soft, almost pleading. Can we talk? I know I don't deserve it, but I need to explain. I could hear the weight of her words, the desperation in her voice. She wanted something from me, but I wasn't sure I had anything left to give her. What do you want to say, Sarah? I asked, my voice cold but controlled. I think we've said everything that needs to be said. I know I hurt you, she whispered, her voice breaking. And I know I can't take that back. But I need you to understand that I never meant to hurt you. I didn't know who I was anymore. I lost myself. And I thought I needed something else. But now, I see it was a mistake. Yeah, it was a mistake, I said, my words sharper than I intended. But I'm not sure that's something I can forget. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said quickly, as if she had rehearsed it. I just want you to know that I regret everything. Every single part of it. I never wanted to lose you. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breath. You've already lost me, Sarah. I've moved on. And I need you to understand that I can't go back. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, trying to gather herself. I understand, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I just wanted to hear you say it. I didn't answer. There was nothing more to say. The silence that followed was not the peaceful kind, but the kind that comes from the end of something. From the quiet acknowledgement that the chapter had closed. Goodbye, Sarah, I said softly, then hung up the phone. The next few days were strangely calm. It was as if, after everything, I had finally found some peace. Not from forgiveness, but from acceptance. I had accepted that Sarah was no longer part of my life. I had accepted that what I had thought we were wasn't real anymore. I wasn't angry anymore, but I wasn't broken either. I spent more time focusing on myself. I kept running, pushing myself harder each day. I started going to the gym more regularly, finding an outlet for the emotions that still stirred inside me. I'd been angry for too long, but now, I was ready to move forward. I didn't know what that looked like yet, but I knew I couldn't stay stuck in the past. A week later, I received a message from my former colleague, Max. He had always been there during my lowest moments, and though we hadn't kept in touch much after I had left the company to start my own business, I had always considered him a good friend. Ethan, I don't know if you're up for it, but I'm having a small gathering at my place on Friday. Some of the old team, a few other people, just to catch up. No pressure, but you're welcome to come by. I stared at the message for a few moments. Socializing wasn't something I had been eager to do. After everything with Sarah, I had withdrawn into myself. But something inside me told me that it was time to reconnect with the world. To stop hiding. So I replied, "Thanks, Max. I think I'll take you up on that. I could use a little distraction." The night of the gathering, I showed up late, not wanting to draw attention to myself. I didn't know what to expect. Part of me felt out of place, like I didn't belong in the world I had once been a part of. But when I stepped into Max's apartment, I was greeted with warmth. The familiar faces of old colleagues, people I hadn't seen in years, smiled at me. It felt good to be around people who didn't know the details of my pain, people who saw me for who I was before everything fell apart. Max caught sight of me from across the room and made his way over. "Ethan! Glad you could make it," he said with a grin, clapping me on the back. "We've been waiting for you." I smiled back, feeling a weight lift just by being in their company. "It's good to see everyone," I said, taking a deep breath. "It's been a while." "Too long, my friend. Come on, grab a drink. It's like nothing's changed." As I moved further into the apartment, the sense of normalcy returned. We talked, we laughed, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't consumed by thoughts of Sarah. I wasn't carrying her betrayal around like a heavy weight. I was simply there. And for that night, that was enough. But of course, it wasn't over. I knew that the healing process wasn't linear. The next few months would be filled with more ups and downs, more questions, more self-reflection. But I also knew this: I had made it through the hardest part. The part where I let go of someone who had once meant everything to me. And as I looked around at the people I was surrounded by that night, I realized something important. I was not alone. The more I immersed myself in my own recovery, the clearer it became that true healing doesn't happen quickly. I had spent so many years focused on the external, the career, the marriage, the friendships, that I had never really taken a step back to look at myself. Now, in the quiet aftermath of Sarah's betrayal, I had no choice but to confront everything I had been avoiding. The first few weeks after the gathering at Max's place were filled with more small steps toward normalcy. But it wasn't just about getting out of the house or meeting people. It was about starting to feel again. I threw myself into work, something I had always found solace in. But this time, there was no pressure. I wasn't doing it to distract myself from the pain or to prove anything. It was just part of my routine, part of the new life I was building. Elena and I grew closer too. Our connection had always been easy, but now there was a depth to it. She was patient with me, giving me space when I needed it, but she also challenged me in ways I hadn't expected. She didn't let me hide behind my past. And that's exactly what I needed. One night, about a month after the gathering at Max's, Elena and I sat on the couch in my apartment, talking about everything and nothing. We had spent most of the evening in comfortable silence, but she was the one who broke it. "You know, I've been thinking," she said, her eyes looking at me with that familiar warmth. "You're stronger than you think, Ethan." I raised an eyebrow, confused by her words. "Stronger? I feel like I'm still figuring things out." "Exactly," she said, her voice steady. "You're not pretending that everything is fine. You're facing it. You're healing, even when it's hard. And that's what strength looks like. Not hiding from the pain, but moving through it." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I had been so focused on trying to rebuild my life that I hadn't stopped to appreciate the work I had already done. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. I was moving forward, piece by piece, even though it wasn't always clear. I smiled at her. "You're right. I guess I've been too focused on what I haven't done instead of what I've already achieved." She reached over and took my hand, squeezing it gently. "It's okay to take credit for how far you've come, Ethan. It's okay to be proud of yourself." Despite the progress, there was still a lingering question I couldn't escape. Would I ever be able to fully let go of Sarah? I had learned to live without the constant ache, without the anger that had consumed me. But I knew I hadn't fully let go of the past. I still had moments of weakness, when I saw something that reminded me of her, or when I had a fleeting thought about what could have been. I wasn't sure if I would ever completely get rid of those thoughts, but I knew they wouldn't control me anymore. One evening, I ran into someone unexpected. It was Sarah. I was leaving a local cafe after meeting with a client when I saw her standing on the sidewalk, talking to a woman I didn't recognize. She looked just the same, her blonde hair pulled into a ponytail, wearing a simple dress that still seemed to highlight her beauty. But there was something different in her eyes. Something more distant. She spotted me before I could turn around and walk away. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, we just stood there, staring at each other. I wasn't sure if I should approach her or just keep walking. But before I could make a decision, she stepped toward me. "Ethan," she said, her voice tentative. "I didn't think I'd run into you here." I didn't know how to respond. The past seemed so far behind, but here she was, standing in front of me, as if no time had passed. "I wasn't expecting to see you either," I said, my voice steady, but the words felt heavier than I wanted them to. "I know we haven't talked in a while," she began, her voice soft. "But I wanted to check in on you. To see how you're doing. I've been thinking about you a lot, and I cut her off before she could finish. "Sarah, stop," I said firmly. "We don't need to have this conversation. We've said everything that needs to be said." She opened her mouth, like she was about to protest, but I held up my hand, signaling that I didn't want to hear any more. The last thing I needed was for her to try to justify what had happened. "I've moved on," I continued, my voice more resolute now. "And I'm not going back. You made your choice. And now I'm living my life." She looked down, her face falling. I could see the pain in her eyes, but it didn't affect me the way it once had. I had accepted that our relationship was over. She had made her choice, and I wasn't going to let it define me anymore. "I'm sorry, Ethan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never meant for it to end like this." I nodded, but I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. "I hope you find happiness," I said quietly, my words genuine, but distant. "Goodbye, Sarah." And just like that, I turned and walked away, not looking back. It wasn't easy moving on. But I was doing it. Slowly, piece by piece, I was rebuilding my life. I had learned the hard way that I couldn't rely on anyone else for my happiness. I couldn't put my worth in someone else's hands. I had to build my own life. For me. Elena had been there for me in ways I didn't even realize I needed. She had given me the space to heal without rushing me, and when I was ready, she was there. She never pushed me. She never asked for anything. She simply accepted me, as I was. And for that, I was grateful. A few months later, I stood in front of a new opportunity. It wasn't just about a job, about a career. It was about taking control of my future, something I hadn't done in a long time. I had worked hard to get to this point, but now it was time to step into a new role. A new life. I was nervous. I had been here before, but it felt different this time. This time, I wasn't carrying the weight of betrayal. This time, I was standing on my own. And that made all the difference. The night before my first day at the new job, Elena and I sat together on my couch. The city lights twinkled through the window, and I felt a sense of calm settle over me. I was ready for whatever came next. "You've got this," Elena said, her hand resting gently on mine. "I believe in you." "I don't know what's going to happen," I said, looking at her. "But I'm ready." And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't just ready for the future. I was living in it. It was easy to fall into the rhythm of the new job, the new life. The days blurred together, long meetings, new projects, and the quiet satisfaction that came with knowing I was building something from scratch, something that was mine, something that couldn't be taken away. The ache of betrayal still lingered, but it wasn't as consuming as it once was. Elena had been a steady presence in all of it. We spent time together outside of my work, in quiet, unhurried moments. She never pressured me to talk about Sarah, never pushed me to get over it faster than I was ready. But over time, she became the one person I could rely on without hesitation. We shared simple evenings, ordering takeout, watching old movies, or just sitting in silence with the weight of the world outside. She was a constant, and I was starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, this was what I needed all along, something real. But that didn't mean everything was perfect. There was still a part of me that was closed off, a part of me that was afraid to trust again. It wasn't Elena's fault, it was mine. I wasn't ready to dive in, to give myself fully to her. I wasn't ready to let go of the fear that something else would fall apart. It was a Thursday when the phone rang. I had just come back from a long day of meetings. My mind was elsewhere when I picked up, and for a brief moment, I didn't recognize the number. "Hello?" I answered, my voice a little distracted. "Ethan." It was Sarah. I froze. I had been waiting for this moment, but now that it had come, I didn't know what to feel. It wasn't anger anymore, but it wasn't forgiveness either. It was more like an open wound that had finally started to scab over, only for someone to tear it open again. "What do you want?" I asked, my tone flat, controlled. "I know you're probably still angry with me," she began, her voice softer than I remembered, almost apologetic. "And I don't expect you to forgive me. I need to say something. I need to tell you something important." I wasn't sure what I expected, but it wasn't this. I didn't know if I even wanted to hear whatever she was about to say. I had already closed the door on our relationship. I had already accepted that it was over, that what we had was gone. But the words were still there, sitting on the tip of my tongue, waiting for her to explain herself. "Fine," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Say what you need to say. There was a long pause before she spoke again. I'm pregnant, she said, her words hanging in the air between us like an explosion waiting to happen. I felt the world shift beneath me. What? I asked, my voice sharp, unable to hide the shock. I'm pregnant, Ethan, she repeated, her voice barely audible. And I don't know what to do about it. I don't even know how to feel about it. But I thought you should know. I sat down on the couch, stunned, unsure of what to say. I had been prepared for many things, apologies, regrets, maybe even a plea for forgiveness. But this was something I had never imagined. I don't know what to say, I finally managed to say, my mind racing, trying to process her words. How could you not tell me earlier? I didn't know what to tell you, she replied, her voice breaking. I didn't know how to make this right. But I couldn't keep it from you anymore. You deserve to know. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The weight of her words had hit me harder than I expected, and I could feel everything inside me tense up. I don't know what this means, I said, my voice shaking with the rawness of it all. I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about this. I don't know either, she said quietly. I just needed you to know. And with that, the line went silent. I stayed there, the phone pressed against my ear, my mind spinning, the weight of everything settling over me again. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. The information Sarah had given me, so raw, so unexpected, was like a storm inside me, a swirl of confusion and disbelief. She was pregnant. With his child. And I was supposed to just process that. How was I supposed to take that in? The next morning, I decided I needed space. I couldn't think clearly with all the noise in my head. I went for a run, pushing myself harder than I had in weeks. The rhythmic pounding of my feet against the pavement was the only thing that seemed to calm me down. But it didn't solve the problem. When I returned to my apartment, Elena was sitting on the couch, waiting for me. She knew something was off. She always knew when something was wrong. Are you okay? She asked, her voice full of concern. You look like you've been running from something. I think I have been, I said, sitting down next to her, the weight of the phone call still fresh in my mind. Sarah called me last night. Elena's eyes narrowed, a subtle but clear shift in her demeanor. What did she want? She's pregnant, I said, my voice almost cracking as I said it out loud. She's pregnant with Robert's child. Elena didn't say anything at first. She just sat there, taking it all in, her eyes soft and understanding. She didn't push me for more details, didn't ask questions. She just let me speak when I was ready. I don't know what to do, Elena, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. This changes everything. I thought I was moving on. I thought I was done with her. I know you're hurting, Ethan, she said gently. But you don't have to figure it out alone. I'm here. Whatever you decide, I'll be here. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to decide, I whispered, the uncertainty overwhelming me. This isn't something I was prepared for. The next few days were filled with a quiet sense of dread. The decision that awaited me wasn't one I could make easily. I had to decide whether to be part of this new life, whether to accept Sarah's betrayal on a deeper level, whether to give her and Robert another chance at a future. And in that process, I had to confront something else, my own sense of identity, my sense of self. For so long, I had let my marriage define me. I had let Sarah define my future. And now, with everything unraveling, I was left to decide who I was on my own. I went to the park one afternoon, hoping the fresh air would clear my head. I sat on a bench, watching the people around me, couples, families, joggers, all of them going about their lives like everything was normal. But I knew my world wasn't normal anymore. I had to make a choice. The hardest part of all of this wasn't the decision to move forward. It wasn't the sting of Sarah's betrayal, or the painful realization that our marriage had been built on sand. It wasn't even the emotional whirlwind of dealing with Robert's involvement, or trying to figure out how to navigate the wreckage of everything that had once felt so certain. The hardest part was the choice I had to make. I had spent so long in a fog of confusion, anger, and sadness that I hadn't given myself the chance to fully process what this all meant. But after everything had settled, after the chaos and the heartache had quieted a bit, I found myself at a crossroads. The truth was, it wasn't just about Sarah and Robert anymore. It wasn't just about the shattered remnants of a marriage. It was about me. It was about who I was going to be moving forward. It was about whether I would allow myself to continue living in the past, wallowing in what had been lost, or whether I would finally let go and start living for myself. Elena had been there through it all. She had seen me at my worst, listened to me vent my frustrations, cried with me when the pain felt unbearable. But through it all, she never pushed me. She gave me the time I needed, and when I was ready, she was there. Not as a savior, but as someone who simply understood. One evening, just a few weeks after Sarah's phone call, I sat with Elena on the couch, feeling the quiet comfort of her presence. We didn't have to talk, it was enough just being together. But I knew this was the moment. The moment I needed to make my choice. "I've been thinking," I started, my voice a little shaky as I broke the silence. "About Sarah?" she asked, her voice gentle but perceptive. I nodded. "About everything. About what's next for me. For us." Elena turned to face me, her eyes steady and calm. She didn't ask me to make a decision. She didn't rush me. She just let me speak, and in doing so, gave me the space I needed to figure things out. "I don't think I can be a part of that life anymore," I said quietly, my eyes dropping to the floor. "I can't keep going back to the past. I can't keep holding on to something that isn't there anymore. It's like trying to put together a puzzle when the pieces aren't the same shape anymore." Elena reached for my hand, her touch warm and grounding. "I know. And I've never asked you to forget. I've never asked you to leave your past behind. But I want you to understand that you're not alone. You don't have to do this on your own." I smiled weakly, feeling the weight of her words sink in. She wasn't asking me to fix myself. She was just offering me the space to heal, to rebuild. And for the first time, I realized how much I needed that. A few days later, I sat across from Sarah at a small cafe. It had been a week since I made the decision to let go, to stop trying to fix something that was broken beyond repair. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was simply ready to move on. Sarah was sitting across from me, her hands clasped together nervously. She had been texting me, asking for a final conversation, and though I had been avoiding it, I knew I had to do this. For my own closure. "I don't know what you expect from me, Sarah," I said, my voice calm but firm. "But I'm done. I'm done with all of this. I'm not going back to the way things were. You had your chance. And I gave you everything. But you chose to betray that." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect anything from you. I needed to tell you that I'm sorry. And I regret it. I regret everything." I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel the same ache I once did. I didn't feel the anger, or the hurt, or even the desire for vengeance. I just felt empty. Empty in a way that finally felt right. Because in that emptiness, there was freedom. There was peace. "I know you're sorry, Sarah," I said quietly. "But I can't keep holding on to something that's gone. I need to move forward. And I think it's time for both of us to stop looking back." She didn't say anything else. She just sat there, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite place. But it didn't matter anymore. The woman I had known, the woman I had loved, was no longer the same. And I wasn't the man I used to be either. I stood up, and as I walked out of the cafe, I felt like I was leaving something behind. Not just her. Not just the betrayal. But the version of me that had been stuck in the past, stuck in the pain. I was moving forward. It was a few weeks later, after everything had settled and I had made peace with my decision, that I received a call from the company. They offered me a promotion, one I had always dreamed of. It was the kind of opportunity one had worked for years to attain, and it felt like the universe was giving me a chance to truly start over. But as I sat in the meeting with the HR manager, I realized something important. I didn't need this promotion to feel whole. I didn't need this job to validate who I was. I had already found my worth. I had already learned that I didn't need anyone else's approval to define me. "I'll take it," I said, smiling for the first time in a long time. "I'm ready for the challenge." And just like that, I knew. I was ready for the next chapter of my life. I was ready to embrace the future without looking back. A few months later, I found myself sitting in the park with Elena. The sun was setting, the golden light making the world around us feel serene. It was a moment of calm, of quiet joy, and I realized how far I had come. "I never thought I could feel this way again," I said, turning to Elena, my voice filled with gratitude. "But here I am. And I think I'm finally whole." She smiled, her eyes soft, filled with warmth. "You've always been whole, Ethan. You just had to find your way back to yourself." And in that moment, I realized that she was right. I had always been whole. I had just needed to let go of the past to find it. Thank you for being with us on Whisper's Secrets. If you enjoyed this, leave a like, drop a comment, and be sure to subscribe. The secrets are waiting to be revealed. See you soon.